Welcome to Liberal Banter with Liz and Olu. This week, we're going to talk about RFK for a little bit and his fun little prank on New York City from 10 years ago. We want to talk about Kamala's VP selection process, and now that she's finally made her choice, how excited everyone is. We're also going to spend a little bit of time talking about Usha Vance. Some of us on this podcast, mostly me, find her to be a fascinating character. So we're going to spend a little time on that. And finally, Elon Musk and Twitter.
All right. So let's dig into RFK and the utter insanity of the story.
Yeah, I'm really excited to start off with this. This is what he told us. And I'm sure many people have seen this story already, but RFK released a video over the weekend on Sunday where he admitted that in 2014, he dumped the carcass of a dead bear cub in Central Park in the middle of the city and then staged the scene to make it look like a bicyclist had run over the animal. And the reason he told us this 10 years later, before you keep saying, the reason he told us this 10 years after the fact is because a New Yorker magazine was going to publish a story about this, and he thought he should get ahead of it. This video that he released, I don't really know who's handling his PR, and maybe it's nobody. Maybe he thinks it's all down to earth, trying to be a normal person, but it is insane. First of all, he tells us that he was out falconing, which is, I guess, a normal pastime for normal people. He was falconing in upstate New York when he came across this dead bear that had been run over. So this is roadkill we're talking about. He saw this dead bear and put it in the trunk of his car because he was going to skin it and eat it later. But then after falconing and having a grand old day out in the woods, he realized he needed to get back to the city for a dinner at a steakhouse. So he rushed down to New York City, bear carcass still in the back of the car, had his dinner, and then realized that he had to get to the airport. So there wasn't enough time for him to skin and, I guess, prepare the meat from the bear. And so he had, I know, it's amazing. He now had this bear carcass in the car in the city. And instead of, I don't know, dumping it, he decided to stage an accident scene in New York City in Central Park. He said because at the time there had been a rash of cycling accidents with pedestrians and people had been killed. So he thought it would be hilarious to stage a bear in the city and make it look like a bicycle accident. That's the story. I don't know what to say at this point.
I mean, I'm clearly oscillating between a deep sigh of sadness and trying not to laugh my head off. It's this like weird sort of juxtaposition, right, of something that is deeply disturbing and also too stupid for you not to laugh. I don't understand. Well, first of all, what has been going on with this election cycle and animals? Leave the worms alone, leave the dogs alone, leave the goats alone, leave the bears alone.
Yes. He actually, he speculated that that's maybe where he got his brain worm from. And I was like, wow. Oh, wow. No way. You mean just eating roadkill isn't like the healthiest way to exist? Oh, wow. Okay. Weird is not the correct word for this. There are so many things wrong with the story. I'm struggling with where to start. It's not even the eating of the bear. Like, that's like the last thing. First of all, the falconing, he's falconing in upstate New York. I mean, is that relatable? Is that a very U.S. pastime? The only time I've ever seen people falconing was in Dubai in the UAE, where a bunch of rich people had their falcons out for a falconing competition. Like, that's the first time I ever heard of falconing. So I don't think that's a normal thing for people to be engaging in on a weekend.
No, and not for somebody who claims to be an animal rights lover and an environmental activist, right? Like
Yeah, it's a little weird.
hunting animals for fun is the opposite of that. Eating and skinning them off of the road is also just no.
Right. And then
I
trying to stage
please
this
go ahead.
accident in Central Park. Like, so he thought it was funny that there had been a bunch of accidents in the park. And he was like, here, let me contribute to this storyline. Just what's funny about that? I don't get it. This was 10 years ago. Okay. Like, this isn't something he did at 15 or 16. So you could say, oh, he was just a dumb kid. This was 10 years ago. Right. Like, how is this man even an option for people? I don't understand. I don't understand.
Exactly. This is the big galaxy brained person that is supposed to be a third option to I guess now Kamala Harris and Trump. I mean, this guy is insane. Every time you hear about him, he's doing something so weird, so creepy, so disturbing. It's just like, what kind of human being is this?
Right. This isn't even the worst story about him. In my opinion, the worst one is where he's accused of sexual assault of a babysitter or a nanny when he's 40 years old. And he says it's just, he's not a church boy. And I'm like, what? WTF? Like, what on earth? What are you saying, sir? You're not a church boy. And he said he has many skeletons in his closet. What? Oh my gosh. I don't understand his polling. Like, I think the last time we saw him, he was at, what is it? Like, I mean, his favorability has dropped a little bit, I think, but he was polling higher than Biden, I think, in favorability at one point. Why? Who are these people they're polling? Where is this coming from?
He is like an idiot's genius. There's no other way to explain this, It's guy appeals to the kind of person who is just like, I don't know, man. There's just, the deep state or whatever conspiracy theory or whatever cabal they think is in charge of the world. Like, this is the type of person that they then gravitate towards. An actual certifiably insane person who who, like, I don't know, scrapes dead animals off of the tarmac and then plans to eat them. This is what we're dealing with, right? This kind of off the grid, off the normalcy scale, just all the way out there.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really just sort of worried, I guess, because we're joking and we're sort of laughing, but the reality is that he has the potential to peel votes away from the Democrats and cause issues in certain states where he's on the ballot. And that is concerning to me. Last time it was Jill Stein, and last time, not 2020, but 2016, I believe Jill Stein was the option, in quote, for people. So much so that when Hillary lost, didn't she offer to pay for a recount or something just to make sure it wasn't her fault? I worry we're going to see a similar scenario again. This man used to be a Democrat, okay? And that's probably who he's taking votes away from. And I really urge people to think and be logical about this.
It sounds like he's drawing votes equally from both sides. There was another video of him released talking to Trump, trying to cut some kind of deal with Trump in which he would support Trump and maybe get something from Trump's administration.
Yeah. I want to add to that point. They mentioned that they reached out to his campaign, and RFK is in talks, apparently, according to his campaign, in talks with Trump for a cabinet position for health and human services. So,
So, I mean,
definitely
in
a
my
deal.
mind, they wouldn't be trying to take him out of the ballot if they didn't think he was a threat to them. But yeah, it's really scary that that guy is going to be in charge of the HHS, because in the video, he's still talking about his vaccine conspiracies and demonizing
Mm-hmm.
doctors in that video. And Trump, who also, is not the most health literate guy, famously the bleach guy. Can you imagine if our president was the bleach guy and our HHS secretary was the brainworm guy? We would be so screwed.
At that point, there would be no sort of federal healthcare standards. It's going to be based on where you live and what your state feels like delivering. And good luck if you live in a state that doesn't care about its people, like, I don't know, Alabama or something. Good luck with that.
Exactly. You would all have to like get your meat off the tarmac.
Oh my God.
Just a crazy, crazy world.
I can't imagine driving past roadkill and thinking to myself, that's lunch. Like, what? What is happening? Maybe I'm not a nature person with my quote big city lifestyle. Maybe I'm too city to think about that. But wow, like holy cow, dude, cow. Okay, let's talk about Kamala Harris. That was a pun. That was not on purpose. Let's talk about Kamala Harris's VP selection. She announced her pick. Olu, your thoughts first, because we did a little poll in our group chat and you didn't pick the right person, even though you had already been given a heads up that the person you chose was not an option. So please tell us
I'm
your
an
thoughts.
honest person, and the poll should represent what I think, not like, what the general wisdom is.
Well, okay.
But initially the feud was much wider, right? And then we learned that it was down to three people: Josh Shapiro, Tim Walz, and Mark Kelly. And then eventually we heard it was down to Josh Shapiro and Tim Walz. And as we know, it's now been confirmed to be Tim Walz. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, all of those choices were great choices, including, the choices that were not white males, people like Gretchen Whitmer and Wes Moore and, Amy Klobuchar. And like the Democratic Party was just spoiled for choice. So to me, I think any of those people would have been great. But yes, I did want Mark Kelly, just because, I found his story to be more compelling. I think it's really, really time to make the gun violence issue like properly the forefront of the Democratic Party platform, especially if we're losing young people over Gaza. This is something that young people have actually wanted for decades, and this is something that we can at least use to motivate the young voter base. So, that's why I wanted him. But Tim Walz is amazing. I just saw his speech. I'm totally a fan. I'm on board with the Tim Walz choice as
well. That's good. I mean, I like him as well. All day on Threads, all we have been hearing is just positive stories from Tim Walz, not Waltz, Tim Walz. He has so many fans in Minnesota. People love him there. He won re-election in that state. And I think that's important, and that says something. I think yesterday the report was that it was narrowed down to Shapiro and Walz, and Mark Kelly was out after the, I guess, weekend of interviews. I don't know what happened with Mark Kelly, but it sounds like maybe the chemistry wasn't there. And so, he didn't make it to the final two. He didn't get a rose. And so he's dropped out. But I'm fine with this choice. And I love his energy. Tim Walz was the one who started this whole Trump is weird, JD Vance is weird thing. I saw today Republicans trying to make it seem like Tim Walz was calling all Republicans weird, and he was not. He was talking about Trump and JD Vance. And so I love that he has that energy that we've talked about multiple times on this podcast, where he's calling people out as he sees it. But I also love that he feels like some Midwestern grandpa. One of my good friends is from Minnesota and said that Tim Walz reminds him of his sort of family at home. Like he has this uncle. This is one of his relatives, basically. And I love that for America to get like another sort of calming figure, but who still has the energy and interest in going after the GOP for the dumb things they say. So I'm also fine with this pick.
Exactly. And as I have been saying to you, and I will now say to our audience, this is DEI and representation successfully at work, right? This is literally what representation means, right? Being able to see someone that looks like you, that reminds you of your family member, that feels familiar. That's it. That's literally what wokeism, whatever you want to call it, that's literally what it is about. And it is fascinating to me that we all agreed as Democrats that, it has to be a white guy. And there was no discussion about it. There was no discussion about it being identity politics, even though it is definitely identity politics, right? We realize that we need more white voters on board. Let's get them a nice white uncle who reminds them of, like their high school football coach, right?
Which he was.
Exactly. But like this is the frustrating part when we talk about opportunities in this country and when we talk about representation in this country. If you're talking about issues that affect white people, it doesn't click. It doesn't raise any outrage about identity or DEI, right? But when it is about minorities, women, transgender people, suddenly it's wokeism. Suddenly it is, cancel culture. Suddenly it's DI, political correctness gone mad. And that is because white people just enjoy this privilege of being the default. So if you're talking about picking a white guy, it just seems like a no-brainer, right? But if you're talking about picking a woman as a VP, suddenly you have to consider, well, how is it going to play? Will other people like her? If you're talking about a black choice or a brown choice, like all of these other baggage is added onto it that white men just simply don't get. So I want any white man out there who doesn't understand how DEI works, how representation works, I want them to look at this process and see that it was DEI at work, right? Because we understood that we had a Californian woman of color on the ticket. Mm-hmm. And we realized that we needed to bring like the Midwest white folks on board. This is about increasing your value to the most people available in the country. And that also includes white people. And I feel that like very passionately about this, as you can hear, because I just want people to understand like this is how it works. It's about creating an umbrella where everybody feels welcome. And if you already have the women kind of feeling welcome and the trans and the gay people feeling welcome under Kamala Harris, then you want to make sure that, the middle America white guys are also feeling welcome. And that's why the Tim Walz or the Josh Shapiro or the Mark Kelly choice makes sense, right? Like it's just common sense. That's representation is common sense.
Yeah, and the conservatives are not taking this well. I mean, I think you and I, when we first spoke about how Kamala Harris was going to be viewed as the nominee for president, that the conservatives were going to have attacks ready, and it's been a few weeks. I'm not seeing. Maybe they're holding their gunpowder. Another pun. Maybe they're holding their fire for later, but I haven't seen it. I would assume
Against
they would
Kamala?
start big. Yeah, I haven't seen the strong response.
Did you miss the NABJ panel? They've been saying things about her being unqualified, about her being a DEI hire, about
right,
her
but
turning black and not being black enough. Like they've
Right,
had
they're
all of
saying
the
it.
usual,
They're
right?
saying it, but nobody is listening or paying it. It's not sticking, right, in the mainstream.
I
Nobody
see.
is discussing
Yeah,
this, right? So they've tried
right.
and it's not sticking. So they're trying the same thing with Tim Walz. And one of their complaints, I'm talking now about a Newsweek editorial today after he was announced that said that he has been a disaster for Minnesota. And what they said was that, quote, this is from a Newsweek opinion piece by Nick Solheim, who is Chief Operations Officer for American Movement. I don't know what that means, but this is a conservative talking point about Tim Walz, that Minnesota is no longer the state he remembers from his childhood, that due to a deluge of immigrants from Somalia, Minnesota now has the largest Somali community outside of Somalia itself, and now has a neighborhood in Minneapolis called Little Mogadishu. And despite all of this, Tim Walz says, quote, refugees strengthen our communities. And that's why he's a disaster for Minnesota, because he welcomes immigrants from East Africa. That's the argument. That's one argument. Hearing things like that, again, the things they think are insults, I don't think it's the insults they think it is. I'm just saying this is not a response. This is not a good talking point. But this is how the GOP continues to flounder and is not putting up any kind of good fight, I think, against now the Harris-Walz campaign.
You know, that's the thing, right? They can't really attack him for being a white guy. That just doesn't, like, ping the prejudicial things
Right.
enough. So they
Right.
have to attach him to something, otherized, because everybody loves the sound of Little Italy, right? Because
Yes.
that's fine. But Little Mogadishu, oh no, that must be,
That's terrible.
that's
Yeah.
terrible, right? Like
Yeah.
there's clearly just the racist dog whistle undertone with that, and that's really all they can do, right? They cannot authorize him because he is currently the default, so they have to start like a very big stretching all the way over to California, like thousands of miles away, to link him to something that's got nothing to do with him.
Right. The Trump campaign released a statement saying that Walz is obsessed with spreading California's dangerously liberal agenda far and wide. And is it an insult to be called California? Like, if you're a state in the U.S., there's 50 of you. One state has the largest economy in the entire country. And if it were its own country, it would be the fifth largest economy in the entire world. And you think that's an insult? Like, what are we doing, guys? This is why people call Trump and his campaign weird. Like, is that an insult? Is it an insult to have a booming economy, excellent weather, beautiful coastline? What's where is the issue here? Where is the negative that you guys are talking
Well,
about? I don't
let's
get
be
it.
frank. Let's be frank, right? It's not about the economy. It's about what California stands for in terms of multiculturalism, right? So they understand that they cannot attack Minnesota, right? Like the Midwest is real America in quotation marks
That's true.
in their perspective. And they've created this thing where, California and New York are just like the opposite sides of the coast are this like Sodom and Gomorrah with, people who are not worthy of being Americans. It's true, like that's the message there, because otherwise they would attack his actual home state. But it's Minnesota. Everybody loves Minnesota. It's like, that like Midwest town with like, Midwest real America feeling. So they understand that they cannot attack Minnesota, but attacking places like New York and California is fair game because it has a lot of black and brown and gay and transgender people, right? And those people are not Americans in their minds.
Yeah, like, oh my God, they celebrate Pride Month and have parades. It's hell on earth. It's hell on earth. Yeah, we can't spend enough time talking about the GOP and their attempts to respond or rebuff what the Democrats are doing. I think it's important, though, that we all recognize what you were saying earlier about this DEI piece. It's true that we all sort of acknowledged and accepted that it had to be a white guy. People were making jokes about it. It was funny. And there wasn't an argument on the left. Again, it's another example of how I think as liberals, as Democrat voters, you can see the difference. If you're an observer and you're just a neutral third party, you can see a difference in how both sides approach what needs to be done. And I think Kamala Harris made a great choice, like we said at the beginning, and I'm rooting for them, obviously. We wish them all the best. I heard they had a great rally today, and we hope that's the start of a beautiful friendship to the White House.
Yes, I mean, I love it for white America. I saw his speech today. He dissed JD Vance with the couch, with
Oh
the
gosh.
false couch story. He dissed Trump about, being one of the most proficient or I guess prolific, criminals in the country. So honestly, he's got good dad jokes. He's got good dad energy. So.
He does. He does. I've seen some videos of him as well. He does have good dad jokes. That's true. That's true. Let's also now move on to our next topic, which, Olu, I know, again, you have thoughts on, which is Usha Vance. I want to start by saying, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, that I am fascinated by her as a person, not in any kind of, oh, I'm going to vote for her husband kind of way, obviously not. But I just, reading about her history and her background and being a, let's say, similarly professional woman myself, I'm always curious about women like her who seem to make choices that are, in my opinion, the antithesis of what you would expect. So I'm fascinated by her choices, but I'll say that, and also I'll let Olu share her perspective.
Okay, I don't have an opinion on Usha Vance. I have an opinion about people's fascination with her.
Good distinction. Very good distinction to make there. My bad. Yes. Okay.
Because on the opposite side of what you're saying, which I think is the opposite side of the same coin, I actually recognize this person, right? And it's not interesting to me, and it's unusual to me that this is the kind of choice she's making. So, I mean, full disclosure, like both of us have immigrant parents, and we sort of like recognize the kind of leaps and bounds that Usha Vance has had to make to assimilate into, America and become this like first generation immigrant success story that she is. Right? And to me, she reminds me of a few of our friends and families and, people we know make these kind of choices where as soon as it becomes clear to them that, a lot of their success depends on suppressing and denying some of the aspects of their own personal history for their own personal gain, they easily make that switch, and there's no cognitive dissonance for them. It's just a natural thing, and it doesn't shake their sense of self at all in the way that it would for you and me.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's definitely a good call out, and something I have seen as well is just, and that feeds my curiosity about her. I've met these people, like Olu was saying, and we know these people, and it's always interesting to me to see the gymnastics that has to happen, right? Because she came out, was it a couple of days ago or in the last few days, sort of defending her husband's childless cat lady comment. which we talked about last week. Like, I want to clarify, I'm not saying that she's a victim here. I don't subscribe to that. Like, she needs help, she should blink twice. That's not my perception. I think she's fully aware of what she's doing and she's very engaged with it. And it's leading to her having to come out with these, to me, ridiculous defenses of the things that her husband and his party are doing, because that's the side she's chosen, basically.
Exactly. What I like to say is give women discredit when discredit is due. Like,
yes,
just give women agency for their bad choices and their awful choices, right? You read this lady's, story. She went to law school in Connecticut, and the judges she could find to clerk with are Brett Kavanaugh and John Roberts. Like, that is definitely a choice, right? Like, that is a choice, maybe initially because she just wanted to seem apolitical or whatever, but that is also making a choice, right? Deciding that you want to be as inoffensive and middle of the road as possible, right? We all know these women who are like, oh, that's politics, and they don't seem to link politics to their own actual lives and their own actual bodily autonomy. It just, for some reason, they're able to park that aside, right? So to me, what she's doing now is very consistent with what it seems like she's always been like.
To me, just given her trajectory, I honestly, she seems like she should have been the candidate, right? I don't know if that's an accurate reading of her. I'm doing all this from a distance, but I feel like she would have made a great candidate. Like, could you imagine? Because she was registered as a Democrat, I think, until a couple of years before J.D. Vance was running for office. I'm not sure on those dates, but she was a registered Democrat. And so to have her now no longer be part of the party, given all of the stuff that's happening, like on one end, you have this Black Indian American presidential candidate who is picking VPs and, fighting the good fight, let's say. And then on the other hand, you have this other Indian American woman who is explaining why her husband made a stupid comment about childless cat ladies. It feels like if I were her in this point, I'd be like, which path did I take that was wrong to end up here? That's what I would feel like. But that's just me and my feelings. We don't know how she feels.
Okay, she's definitely considered all of that. I mean, this is a Ivy League trained lady, like multiple, accolades and awards and, credit to her name and her credentials. So, like, let's just give her some credit, give her some agency, because she's clearly made these calculations and this is the choice she has landed on. And if that's her choice, that's fine. It's very easy to make these choices, and these are choices that people can make, either way, and they can justify, either way, because you're right. I mean, if she was a registered Democrat and she is a professional lady, she knows many, many, many women, some of whom she probably would count as her friends, who J.D. Vance has now categorized as childless cat ladies, right? She knows that her husband voted or did not vote for the child tax credit plan, right? She knows the ways that vote against women's bodily autonomy and also vote against women being able to make the choices that would even allow them to afford children in the first place. This is why I don't find it interesting. This is an intelligent lady. Whatever it is, argument it is that you think you want to make for why she shouldn't be in this position, she already knows it. This is not a person who doesn't know what the arguments are. She knows them. So she's just clearly made a decision that this is what is better for her and for her family. And that is just a personal choice that she's making. The rest of us be damned.
Yeah, and that is actually a wonderful segue to our last topic. Speaking of women who make choices that they're fully aware of, Elon Musk and Twitter, I'm not calling it X, Twitter and Linda Yaccarino. If you're not aware, today, because this is a big news day, maybe you're not paying attention. Today, Twitter announced that they would be suing a group of companies who had stopped advertising on X. These companies are part of a organization that I'm trying to look up the name here. It's the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And the companies that are part of, their acronym is GARM. The companies that are part of GARM stopped advertising on Twitter for reasons that make sense to normal people. You know, maybe you don't want your ads showing up next to like Nazi propaganda, right? Reasonable expectation for companies. Today, though, Twitter decided that they were going to sue members of GARM because these members were, quote, performing an illegal boycott of Twitter by not advertising there. And they were costing Twitter billions of dollars. So Elon and Linda Yaccarino decided today they would sue. Elon's quote was, "We tried being nice for 2 years and got nothing but empty words. And now it is war." Fun fact, some of the justification seems to be coming from the antitrust lawsuit against Google. So I want to talk about this because just like Usha Vance, Linda Yaccarino has had a similarly very strong background. She has worked in TV and media advertising for decades. She spent 15 years at Turner Entertainment. She was COO. She worked at NBC Universal for over a decade, where she was brought in by the CEO. She has a strong pedigree in media and advertising sales, and that is what led to her getting a job at Twitter, because, you know, Elon needed to bring in advertisers to support the company. But then he also told them to, and I'm going to swear here, he told them to fuck off because they insisted that he stop opening the platform to just every and any random bigot on the internet. He refused. Advertisers complained. They left. And now Twitter is suing them because they left. I don't understand this, but the sad part to me is that Linda Yaccarino was the face of this announcement. It was a lame video where she comes out and is doing a lot of pointing at the screen, telling people, you know, these advertisers are harming you. And I'm watching the video and I'm like, I'm not harmed if Disney doesn't want to advertise on Twitter. That's you guys, not me. But it's another example of a woman who, knowing Elon's reputation, she definitely knew what she was getting into when she joined this team. And now she's again being put, just like Usha, being put as the face of a terrible decision and having to defend it and clean it up and make excuses for the man who actually caused the problem.
100%. You know what the Twitter video reminded me of? The Kitty Britt Soto response.
You're not the first person to say that. Lots of people said that. It definitely felt like that.
There's just a lot of fake acting, and, you know, I am really just concerned about you kind of way of her trying to sell this to people, right? It was just so fake, so phony, very poorly acted. She had her hand on her chest and she was taking these deep gasps and sighs. Like, lady, calm down.
She was so injured by the decision. Right. She didn't want to do it, but she had to. It's funny to me that she was wearing a necklace that said free speech. You know, isn't money speech? Didn't we decide that as a country? So how does it work if a company wants to take their quote free speech somewhere else? Aren't they allowed to do that? Isn't how the free market is supposed to work? Now it's a problem. Now they want the government to step in or something. I don't understand the basis of this lawsuit. I'm not a lawyer, though, I feel like I should say. But I still don't think it makes any sense. I don't think any judge is going to listen.
It's fascinating to me where these like libertarian bros, where they draw the line between government for others and government for themselves. I read that they were going to use antitrust laws to argue this case, which I couldn't stop laughing from the irony of all of this. these oligarchs, these billionaires, do all they can to lobby against antitrust laws, to break antitrust laws. They've spent the last few years, mounting a smear campaign against the FTC, right? um, Twitter and Elon Musk wants to use that very government function for his own advantage. And I'm just putting this out there for, you know, all the plebs like us who tend to fall for this, just be independent, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Don't let the government do anything. Make the government smaller. Like, this is a con. They are scamming you, they are defrauding you, because clearly they expect the government to give them tax credits. Clearly they expect the government to step in and, change antitrust laws for them and change advertising laws for them so they can make more money. But when the government wants to give you, like, child tax credit for your own children, they are against that. And this is what does my head in about the way we talk about things. And this Linda lady was trying to do that, right? In the video, she's trying to make it seem like this is about the common man, but it is not. It is about Elon Musk's bottom line. It's about Elon Musk's net worth, right? Because when it's about money that actually comes to your house, into your pockets, they are more than happy to lobby against that.
Yeah, I'm never going to forgive them for blocking the student loan forgiveness. I'm going to be 100 years old complaining about that one. But yes, to your point, 100% agreed. It is fascinating how, especially Elon Musk, who in the last few years has really just turned on his so-called liberal ideals and become this bastion of right-wing ideology. He spews anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on his platform, is anti-LGBTQ people. I mean, to the point where he's being called out by his daughter online. This man has made such a 180, let's say, from the person who people thought he was, which was, the inspiration for Tony Stark's Iron Man in the Avengers. It's a huge, huge shift. It's happened over the last few years, especially. And it's been fascinating to watch. But it's also interesting to see who is choosing to align themselves with him at this point. I mean, I saw someone made a joke that said, if this is possible, then Krispy Kreme should sue him because he went on a diet and stopped eating their donuts. Like, you cannot do that. People are allowed to take their money elsewhere. That's how the system works. So I'm not rooting for them at all. I hope this lawsuit is thrown out as it should be. But the larger picture about companies sort of using the government when it's convenient for them and then ignoring it when it's not still stands, and that's part of the system of America. And I don't know if there's anything we can do about it at this point.
In my mind, what the average person can do about it is stop falling for these stories of libertarian success and success without government and building everything by yourself, because that's clearly not how it works. If they are lobbying against your own student loan forgiveness, and then they are more than happy to take R&D money from the government to help them develop their technologies and all that they don't even have to pay back. They have all of these loans, they have all of this investment that they allow the government to make for them before they then actually become profitable. And this is for the people who work for them, actually, because I feel like the people who work for people like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and the Bill Ackmans and all of those people, y'all have been brainwashed. They keep telling you that they did this all by themselves. You put them on a pedestal, this idolatry, and that's actually not how they made their money. They made their money on the backs of the government, and then they get to tell you that you don't deserve healthcare. that you don't deserve student loan forgiveness.
Okay, I'm feeling a little called out by your last statement. You forgot to add present company excluded. Not everyone who works at a giant tech company or whatever is idolizing the CEO. I think it's actually probably the opposite. Very few people who get an inside look into how Silicon Valley and tech works. If you get a real inside look, I don't think you're still going to be thinking, oh, these people are, bastions of industry or something. They're just regular men and women who got lucky. But understood your general larger point. I just want to step in, because us coastal people, we have to defend each other when people who don't work in the industry are trying to call us out. I'm not saying there are no like Musk fanboys or whatever, but for example, not everyone driving a Tesla thinks Elon is a genius. Some people just wanted a tax break for an electric car. Just don't lump us all in together. Okay, thank you.
Okay, fine. All right. On that note, thank you for joining us this week. We have been Olu and Liz. You may find us wherever you listen to your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. You may also reach us at Liberal Banter on Threads, Instagram, and TikTok. We will be back next week. For now, we say goodbye.